Hello and welcome to State of the Unions, a series of programmes looking at the teaching unions as they hold their annual conferences. For this Teachers TV News special, we've come to Harrogate, where the National Union of Teachers have been meeting. Later on I'll be talking to their General Secretary, Steve Sinnott, and putting to him some of the issues raised at the conference. Debate here has focused on the issue of pay, with delegates unanimously backing proposals to prepare for a strike ballot over the government's 2% public sector pay target. The conference also voted to oppose the introduction of the new diplomas, calling for an independent review of vocational training. In her speech to conference, Baljit Gale, the union's first black president, said plans to teach British values in schools would fuel racism. During the conference, the union also launched charters on promoting the achievement of black Caribbean boys and on curbing the commercialisation of childhood. The conference closed with a speech by Steve Sinnott.
The NUT's exclusion from education policy matters is an outrage. Conference, it's sometimes clear and sometimes not clear how hard we've been working to end this exclusion. Today, I can tell Conference we've initiated legal proceedings against the Secretary of State.
For the 1,000 or so delegates gathered here, representing some 260,000 of the NUT members across England and Wales, the conference is a chance to air their views. So what do they think are the most important issues affecting teachers? And what do they want their union leadership to focus its efforts upon?
I think the issue that affects nearly all teachers in whatever sector they're teaching in is the issue of workload. But there are also a whole range of issues that you would knit together, whether that's performance-related pay and performance management, whether it's the issue of trying to ensure that the public sector pay is brought up to what it should be. There are all sorts of issues that affect different people in different sections of the country. But for me personally, the issue of workload sort of seems to knit all that together.
I think there's a lot of anxiety about how the vocational qualifications will be handled, and I have anxiety about this because I see collaboration going on in my own county of West Sussex in the 16 to 19 area, supporting typically German A-level as a low subscription subject. We have children bussed around the county, but unfortunately the minibuses don't always turn up.
I think for me it's the motion on racism. I think that's the most essential one, because when I look around, I think there's a lot our black kids need to know about the black history, because if they do understand their history, then they'll build the confidence and self-esteem they need in order to face all the put-downs they get in school and in society, and therefore that will build their confidence.
The most important thing which teachers are facing at the moment, I say this as a divisional secretary, and the one they're mainly facing is workload. All aspects related to workload. And we've heard discussions on stress. We've heard discussions on planning, on performance management, and also the working hours. These are the questions which teachers are facing the most, and these are the ones which they're most concerned about.
I think there's a mood within conference of doing something about teachers' conditions and actually standing up and saying enough's enough. And I think that's come out very clearly this year.
Delegates giving their view of what they think are the issues that matter to teachers. So when I talked to Steve Sinnott here in Harrogate, I put some of those issues to him. Steve, your conference voted to prepare a ballot for a one-day strike over the issue of pay. But do you think there really is a mood amongst your members for a strike? After all, you're getting 2.5% in September, and as the government has pointed out, you've had an 18% real terms increase since '97.
Well, there clearly has been the pay increases. What we want to do is defend those levels of pay. And what the government are promising us is that in the future the pay increases will be below the predicted rate of inflation, so teachers would suffer a pay cut. At the time when we, I think, may have turned the corner in some areas of teacher shortages, I think it would be a disaster for us to exacerbate that by reducing the pay of teachers. So what we in the NUT want to do is to work as closely as possible in dealing with this issue with the other teachers' organisations and with other unions in the public sector, learning the lessons of a successful campaign conducted in defending teachers' pensions. So we want to do it with others, want to do it as much collaboration as possible, but we're determined to protect teachers' pay levels.
What teachers watching this will want to know is how likely is it that there will be then a one-day strike?
Well, what we will be doing is talking with the other unions at the TUC on May the 14th, and we will be preparing a campaign from then. The intention will be to coordinate that campaign, as I say, very, very closely with the other teachers' organisations, and indeed to coordinate that through the TUC with the other public sector unions.
On a related issue, working hours and duties for teachers, you made it quite clear today that you're going to see the government in court. What's that going to involve?
Well, we're going to have a call into scrutiny decisions that have been made by Alan Johnson, which contradict the recommendations of the School Teachers Review Body, where they've recommended that on a whole range of areas there should be discussions with all interested parties, including the NUT. And because of difficulties we've had with the Secretary of State in the past, we've been excluded from a whole range of discussions. We're going to see if the Secretary of State has been abiding by the law. All the legal advice we have that he's broken the law, and that will be now determined by the judges.
If you rejoin, or if you entered the social partnership, wouldn't that solve the problem? I mean, after all, the head teachers have now gone back in.
Well, what we know is that we want to be involved in discussions, but we want to be able to say that there are things that we can't promote that would be against the principles of the NUT. I'm a trade unionist. I know how to make deals, but I also know that we're an independent union, and we've got to be able to say we disagree on some things, and we can't be having particular conditions laid down in terms of you being involved in discussions. What is emerging is that there is a process underway to de-recognise the National Union of Teachers, and I'm determined that we do everything to prevent that de-recognition.
One of the things that your conference was very strong about was its opposition to the diplomas, the new diplomas that are not far off actually now. Voted to oppose them. One person said they'd only be recognised by the factory down the road. There seems to be a bit of a change of tune though. I thought there was a lot of support amongst teachers, at least for the Tomlinson proposals for the diploma.
Well, I think that if we'd have had the Tomlinson proposals properly implemented, I think you would have found our conference wholeheartedly supporting them. But people will remember that the government got cold feet after the broad alliance that was developed by Mike Tomlinson to a particular process. The broad alliance started to splinter at the time of the 2005 general election. We'd love to return back to Tomlinson, but we've got two things we're asking for. We think that there'll be a process underway whereby in 2008 we think we can raise the issue again to stop the vocational and academic divide. We think there'll be an opportunity for us to raise that then, and we will do so. But I've also written to the Secretary of State saying if they go ahead with their proposals, then what we wish to do is to ensure that they are implemented as well as could possibly be the case. And at the moment, I don't think schools are properly prepared for the enormity of these changes. And I've asked him to grant 2 further school closure days, and when we can carry out professional development on these issues at a school or local authority level.
Now, during the conference, you also brought forward a charter on the education of Black Caribbean boys. We have had a lot from other bodies, from Ofsted, from the department, on this issue. What's different about your charter? Is it the fact that I did notice you put more responsibility, or you said there should be responsibility for the boys themselves and the fathers? Is that what's different about your approach?
Well, we're not Ofsted and we're not the Department for Education and Skills. We're representatives of teachers, and I think we've got a finger on the pulse of really what's going on in the schools. We welcome what other people have done, and we think that we've got an additional contribution that we can make, speaking on behalf of teachers and on the part of schools. What we're saying very, very clearly is that everybody involved here has a responsibility to deal with a serious issue. It has to be a serious issue if only 1 in 3 Black Caribbean boys are getting 5 A stars to C. It has to be a big concern with us that there are more black youngsters in jail than there are in universities. These are big concerns, and education has to play its role in trying to tackle these issues, and teachers need to too.
Your president got quite a lot of headlines when she attacked the government for recommending or for urging schools to teach so-called British values. The government says British values are things like tolerance, freedom of speech, justice. So what's the problem with teaching those?
I don't think there's any problem with teaching those. I'm in favour, and the NUT is in favour of teaching those. I think what our president was saying was there's nothing particularly British about those things. Indeed, many of them are identified in international charters. They're identified in the UN Declaration of Human Rights. They're identified in the United Nations Charter itself. These are values that are beyond simply British values. I'd be delighted to work with Alan Johnson, to work too with the ministers for education in Scotland, in Wales and Northern Ireland, to work with all our diverse communities on constructing the type of values that we wish to promote within our schools, recognising the diversity of our communities. We want to work together on identifying, we want to say, these are the values we're now adopting and we wish to promote, and we wish to say that, that Britain is identifying these and taking them forward. We haven't got a problem at all.
But I wasn't clear what she thought was potentially racist about teaching those values.
Well, I think here you have a woman, Baljit, who's born in Kenya, of Indian heritage, lived most of her life in Britain. She wanted to find ways in which we could properly identify those values too as being not just British, but what they are is human values, global values for peoples everywhere. It's a bit much for us to simply claim that they're ours.
Finally, Steve, you've had some quite hostile press, not surprisingly, you've got used to that over the years, about some of the things that the NUT has done. I mean, we've had, for example, teachers threatening strikes, teachers demanding more holidays, saying they might walk out if it gets too hot in schools. An awful lot there about what the NUT is opposed to. Is there anything that the NUT is for?
Well, look at the things that we have been for, and we've established over the years in our conferences. We're certainly for a student voice. I was heavily promoting the idea of a student voice and defending youngsters having an influence. That's a key issue. We've been promoting the rights of youngsters to be free from exploitation of some of the commercial companies. We've been promoting those things. We've been promoting a type of education service that values all youngsters, and we want to not reintroduce secondary moderns in the context of the new diplomas. We've been promoting all of those things. The positive contribution from our charter for raising the achievement of Black Caribbean boys, these are positive things. The press have said some traditionally, I think unhelpful things about the NUT, but not all of them. And there was a delightful editorial praising my contribution to changing the nature of the NUT over the course of the past few years. I prefer the good headlines, but I feel just sometimes I've got to live with the bad ones too.
Take the rough with the smooth. Steve Sinnott, thank you very much indeed. Well, that's it from State of the Unions, reporting from the NUT's conference in Harrogate. Watch out for the next Teachers TV News special from the NASUWT conference in Belfast, where I'll be talking to their General Secretary. For now, goodbye.